You know, recently at Robert Morris University, we've marked 10 years of the presidency of Greg DeLomo, and he has truly transformed the campus, along with a lot of us who have worked closely with him. And I think one of the reasons that the board had in mind for my taking the reins is that I have worked side by side with Greg for this period of time, and we're going to continue nothing but progress at Robert Morris University. The mark of a mature university, I think, is entertaining a variety of ideas. And recently at our campus, we have sponsored programs on examining black male achievement in higher education, on combating sexual violence on the campus, and physicist Michio Kaku, our Pittsburgh Speaker Series speaker, talked about life on other planets and the persistence of time. This is what a university is all about, and I'm really proud to be part of Robert Morris University. I came to the university in January 2002. It was a snowy evening, but a beautiful one when the Robert Morris became a university. That was the first night that we were a university. We emerged from Robert Morris College. Many of you in Pittsburgh know Robert Morris from its history as a tremendous business school since the 1921 founding as the Pittsburgh School of Accountancy. We're still, I think, one of the strongest business schools in the entire region, but now we've become even more. We've added programs in computing and nursing and education, in engineering, mathematics, and science, so that now I think we take our place as a strong regional university, and we're proud to sponsor this speaker series. This is, I think, our third year of the speaker series, the CEO Lecture Series. And the CEO Lecture Series, I think, emerged from the business school, and many of our business school friends are here. Pat Litzinger, our longtime stalwart of the business school, has invited a lot of members of the Board of Visitors. A number of our business school colleagues are here, Professor Rudd and others, and I hope you'll have a chance to greet them today. CEOs come in a variety of forms and lead a variety of roles, and we're proud to introduce the richness of what it means to be a CEO. So Robert Morris is still your grandfather's Robert Morris, but it's a lot more than that as well. It's still that strong business school where every student has an opportunity to get a position in a career, but it's also an emerging school in the region. We now have accreditations in every school. We have our graduates every place in the region, and I think it's become an excellent place. So on behalf of President DeLomo, who is in Spain today with an alumni trip, someone had to do it, I guess, so he said, you go to Pittsburgh, I'll go to Spain. He presided on Saturday over our 90th commencement ceremony, in which we graduated nearly 900 students, and we continue to grow and continue to be strong. So we invite you to learn more about RMU, but in particular this morning, thanks to Henderson Brothers, thanks to all of the folks who are here this morning for being our sponsor. A little bit later, our media partner, Pittsburgh Quarterly, represented by Doug Hoyk, will be introducing our speaker, Jeff Broadhurst, a member of our Board of Trustees, after breakfast. Thank you all for being here.
This is a delicious breakfast. I was just about to take my first bite of my Robert Morris Smiley cookie. I'm looking forward to doing that. Let me just say before I get into introductions that I hope you all, if you have questions, will fill out the cards that you have and hand them to one of our many people around who are being eager to collect them so that we can have a nice Q&A afterwards for Jeff. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce Jeff Broadhurst, who's president and CEO of Eaton Park Hospitality Group, which, I mean, I think we have some sense of how successful Eaton Park has been, but in learning the details of Jeff's bio, it's much bigger and more successful than even I was aware. Eaton Park is a provider of over 175 diversified food service locations throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. And the hospitality group encompasses 3 integrated business divisions: Eaton Park Restaurants, with which we're all familiar, Parkhurst Dining, which most of us know, a provider of contract dining services to all sorts of institutions around the region, and Cura Hospitality, a provider of dining services to senior living facilities, retirement communities, regional hospitals, and like. So Eaton Park, the company does business in 8 states and has over 9,000 team members. Newer ventures include 3 major brands Hello Bistro, serving burgers and fresh salads in Oakland, Southside, downtown. Six Pen Kitchen, upscale American bistro in the Cultural District. And the Porch at Shenley, of course, the great place at Shenley Plaza. So Jeff joined Eaton Park Hospitality Group as Director of Business Development for Parkhurst Dining in 1996, following a 5-year career with Federated Investors in their Chicago and Kentucky markets. 2002, he was promoted to President of Parkhurst Dining, and in 2006 took over the responsibilities of President of Eaton Park Restaurants. In 2008, Jeff became President and CEO of Eaton Park Hospitality Group. He received his undergraduate degree in hotel management from Cornell and an MBA from the Katz School of Business here at Pitt, and he is also a trustee of Robert Morris University. So please join me in welcoming Jeff Broadhurst.
Good morning. How is everybody? Great. Well, I know at least 2 of you did the right thing yesterday. You had a meal at Eaton Park Restaurants. How many? I know there were at least 2. Who else had a meal yesterday at Eaton Park? Are you kidding? There's only like 4 of you out of 110,000 meals we served yesterday? Slow start to the morning here, but thanks for being here. And Doug, thanks for the introduction. Most of that's true, but thanks for being here today. And it's interesting, when I was thinking about yesterday, I was putting together my final comments, and I was trying to relate our organization to Robert Morris. And David just mentioned this morning, this is the 90th commencement on Saturday, so congratulations to that. What's interesting is Robert Morris started out very similar to Eaton Park Restaurants in that they started out as a 2-year accounting school many, many years ago and have now grown into a very extensive, comprehensive university. Similar to what Eaton Park started out as. Eaton Park started out back in 1949 as a very small restaurant on Sawmill Run Boulevard. Many of you probably remember the building's still there. There's not an Eaton Park there anymore, but there's still a building. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, how we've grown into a very extensive organization that's now in 8 states, as Doug mentioned. Over 9,000 team members. We will serve over 50 million meals this year, hopefully. 50 million last year, so hopefully we can continue to do that as well. And we love what we do, obviously. But before I get started, what I want to do, and obviously I love to answer questions, so please write down as many questions as possible. I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes or so. Talk a little bit about how we've evolved as an organization. Some of the challenges involved with growing a more diversified organization from a very simple concept. And then I'll talk a little bit about the family business atmosphere. How many of you are in family businesses here? So there's a few. And I see that you guys don't sit at the same table, I see. The Grillishes. It's smart. We know that. Henderson Brothers, they split up. That's how they stay alive. And friends, so congratulations to Dan and Tom. But so you know what I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. But ultimately, back in 1949, this is how we started. And some of you, probably not too many of you, anyone visited that restaurant? I don't think many of you. It might be 1 or 2 of you. But ultimately, what's interesting, when that opened on June 7th, Larry Hatch was the gentleman who started it, was a businessman. Believe it or not, he opened at breakfast. He closed before dinner. That was not the intention. And the reason why he closed, and I would ask the question if anyone knew why, but no one's ever known the real reason, so I'm just going to give you the answer. He closed down because he was too busy. He couldn't keep up anymore. So those of us in the restaurant business wish that was the case now. But he ultimately closed down at 6 o'clock, regrouped, got set back up, and opened up the next morning. And that was sort of the start of Eaton Park Restaurants as we know it. He was a businessman, and many of you probably, before you ask on the cards, why is it not called Park and Eat? As I mentioned, he was a businessman. He realized very early on that he could not trademark it. Park and Eat was sort of a natural term. There was actually a restaurant out in California trying to trademark it, but they were unsuccessful. So all he did was just flip it. No rhyme or reason. He just said, if I can't trademark Park and Eat, I'll just flip it Eaton Park, and there's how the name sort of came about. So pretty simple. From 1949 until 1996, this is what we were about, Eaton Park Restaurants. One concept. At that point, in 1996, we probably had about 75 restaurants. We've come down to about 71 since, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Up until then, and I'm going to talk about innovation here in a little bit, innovation was all around keeping this brand alive. Many of you in this room probably remember the Howard Johnsons, the Hojos, the Sambos, and I could go on and on and on, concepts that aren't around anymore. Innovation, at this point, my father, who bought the company back in the early 80s, he was actually a banker with PNC Bank, or PNB Bank, I guess it was way back then, came over as the treasurer in 1972, and then ultimately bought the company in the early 80s from Larry Hatch and his family. At that point, my father was all about innovating in the one concept. Things like the Smiley Cookie, which obviously you see on the table there. The bakery. Doesn't sound like a big deal now, but there were no full-service bakeries and restaurants back in the 70s and 80s. And ultimately, the salad bar, where now 25% of every single guest that comes in our restaurant eats at our salad bar. Those are things that kept us alive. Those are things we constantly continue to evolve and make better in our mind. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. In 1996, actually 95 was a key year. And I wasn't at the company yet. My brother Brooks had just come back to the company. We talked a lot about, at that point, when I say we, the executives there, including Dan Wilson, our CFO, and my father, is how do we stay regional? At that point, my father decided he did not want to take the company national, but wanted to stay regional. And that's how we got into many of the additional concepts that I'll talk about here in a minute. And so 66 years later, we now are in 8 states. We have over 175 different locations, and we'll serve over 50 million people. Eaton Park Restaurants now makes up only 40% of the company. So from 96 to 2015, we've evolved dramatically. In addition, since then, the culture stayed the same. And I'm going to talk a lot about our values here in a minute, because I think that's what really has been able to keep us growing in the right direction. Obviously, we've got challenges just like any other company, and I'll talk about those as well. But the culture's been the same. It starts with taking care of the people. When I say the people, ultimately is our team members, treating them. I spoke last week to some family business folks, and I talked about treating all 9,000 people like family. Yesterday, which was, quite frankly, our busiest day of the year, Mother's Day, and so many of us in the Corporate Support Center spend our Mother's Day on the road in our restaurants. It's the greatest day of the year, and I love going out there. People are happy, friendly. We're all celebrating mothers. And what makes it unique is I was over at our new Ken restaurant yesterday morning, and we've got Bonnie, who's an 85-year-old server. She's worked every Mother's Day since she's worked for us, 35 years, and she comes in, she hands Smiley cookies to all the moms. All she does is walk around the restaurant and hand Smiley cookies out. And it's treating the guests just like family. And we treat, obviously, our team members like family as much as we can, for sure. So it's all about the culture. Before I jump into this, I do want to just show you a quick video, because everyone knows Eaton Park. Many of you probably don't know some of the other concepts. And I'll talk about Delicious Raw at the end, because it's so new. But let me just show you this real quick, and you can get an idea of what we're all about. And we probably also sold about 7,000 strawberry pies yesterday as well. When I saw that thing, I'm actually hungry for one right now. I only had one piece yesterday. But diversification is great. Many of you in this room are probably in the investment business, and you think the same thing. Growing a business like ours, we truly do believe diversification is a real plus. It adds challenges, and some of the challenges, I'd love to walk through some of the challenges. Some of the biggest things that we've learned more recently is sort of our investment allocation, believe it or not, in the different brands. We've got, 7 or 8 different brands when you include Delicious Raw. And every particular year we sit down and determine how much, being a privately held company, there's only so much capital to go around. Where do we spend that capital? We typically look for a return on invested capital of about 25%. So any more these days, we take a look at the brands that have the opportunity to exceed that and invest the majority of the money there. And I'll talk about that in a little minute, in a bit as well. A couple of other challenges. Sharing across the different brands. We try as much as possible to share best practices across the different brands, but at the same time, we try to keep each brand unique. So, and I'll talk about some of the failures here in a little bit as well, but we had some things called the Park Classic Diners that some of you may remember back in Monroeville, Jeanette, and Boardman. And we had some great food products there, but back then we were not allowed internally to take food products from from Park Classic Diner to Eaton Park. So that's an example back then of using, actually, let me take a step back here. The diners. Best thing about the diners were the food, quite frankly. And we clearly at Eaton Park wanted to bring some of those ideas across to Eaton Park, but just couldn't do it. For the simple reason we didn't want to blur Park Classic Diner at Eaton Park. We run into that all the time at Parkhurst, Cure, and Eaton Park as well now. Constantly are trying to figure out what do we need to keep unique for Parkhurst, keep unique to Cura, keep unique to Eaton Park, at the same time trying to bring some of the best practices across the different brands. Third thing is keeping everyone informed. Now that we've grown beyond just Eaton Park, lots of different executives work in different brands, and they always want to know about everything and everything that's going on. So we've got steering team meetings that happen every month. We've got weekly calls. There's always those examples of people, they want to learn more. And we got to constantly be reminding people that you're not going to know everything. Back when it was Eaton Park, and my father is quite frankly the one that always wants to know, but he's not always here because he retired a few years ago, but he always, I was with him yesterday, and we were having lunch, and there was one thing, he's like, you didn't tell me about this. I said, no, I didn't. I didn't think you needed to know. So the best thing you try to do is avoid him at all costs, but yesterday was Mother's Day, so I had to see him. No, we got along great. But there's always those things, whether it's a family member, and family members we're going to talk about here as well. Communication becomes more and more of a challenge as you grow into different concepts as well. The other thing is now that our goal ultimately is to keep the top of the sort of org chart at a minimum. And how do you now spend, I know that's one thing I struggle with, is when we got 7 or 8 different brands, how do we allocate our time? Which brands do you spend the most amount of time on? And Dan Wilson, who's one of our outstanding executives that many of you know, our CFO, he and I talk about this a lot, is how much do we spend focusing on Eaton Park versus Parkhurst versus Cura? And then the final thing comes into play. Eaton Park's obviously our legacy brand. It's been around since 1949. It's probably in the most challenging of all markets for sure. It never stops amazing us how we have new and new competitors that come in, quite frankly, just about every day. And what's interesting is these new competitors come with brand new buildings. Our buildings are not the nicest looking buildings, I'll admit. Some are nice, and we're continue to reinvest about $5 to $6 million every year in our Eaton Park brand. We're tearing down things, but our buildings will never be as nice as some of these brand new competitors. So how do we continue to keep our core fresh? We'll talk about that here in just a second. How have we done it? Biggest thing, and I get this question a lot, how have we been able to grow from Eaton Park into 175 locations, 8 concepts? And it really starts with our core values. These core values have been in place ever since I came back in 1996. And there's 5 of them here. You can read them. I really want to single out 2 of them. These clearly are taught on day 1. Every orientation, whether it's the management orientation or hourly team members, they learn about the core values. Whether or not they remember them, I'm not sure. But I'll show you a little exercise that we did to really bring it down to their level as well here in a minute. The 2 that I really want to spend time on that I spend the most time thinking about and talking about. We care about people and innovation. People, we have 9,500 team members. We'll do 50 million guests. It's all about the people. I talked a little about Mother's Day yesterday. We can't be in this business without people. That's what we're all about. Forget the buildings, forget the food. It's the service. It's Bonnie yesterday walking around at the age of 85 coming in and serving the mothers. That's what we're all about, and that's what differentiates us clearly from the marketplace. And ultimately, when we talk about we care about people, we must value their opinion. And I'm going to show you an exercise that we did. I think it was really game-changing for our organization last year as a way to sort of roll out our core values and relate it to our mission statement. But it ultimately goes down to sitting down with individuals, learning about what they care about, their opinions, how they can make our concepts better. And we spend a lot of time reaching out to our team members, trying to understand how we can be better for sure. Turnover. In our business, believe it or not, in the restaurant business, last year the turnover was about 85%. Ours was just under 50%. But you may think 50%, it's unbelievable still. And when I say that number, many of you, does anyone have turnover of 50% or more? I'd be shocked to believe that. So 1 of every 2 team members will leave, and we'll be replacing them. So recruiting, training is essential. And it's getting worse right now, only because of unemployment being very low. But that's something people is what it's all about. Then on the innovation side, we care about innovation. We talk a lot about this, and I'll mention a phrase here in just a second. But in order to stay relevant for 65 years in the restaurant business, you have to innovate. And you have to be willing to make a lot of mistakes. Obviously, the bakery, the Smiley Cookie, our brunches, and those kind of things have been big successes, and they've kept us in business. But there's been a lot of other things that haven't worked along, like the Park Classic Diner that I mentioned just a minute ago. Many of it have come and have gone, for sure. This exercise, I want to show you this quick thing, and some of you may have heard about this. We spent a lot of time last year trying to figure out how we can relate our team members to our individual mission statements. Each one of our brands has their own mission and vision. Core values are the same across all the brands, but the mission and visions for each brand are different. So how do we ultimately take the 9,000 team members and allow them to relate to each individual mission and vision? And this is how we did it last year. And it really was, and I encourage you to think about this as you go back. So this is something we did across all of our locations, 175 locations. And actually, these are just some of the folks that we actually sort of pulled a number of them. But it really is something to think about. When you go back, could you do this? And it's the hardest thing is trying to relate the mission statement of each location or each brand, each individual team member. And this was something we did last year. It was game-changing for sure. And what's more important about it is each now team member has got something that's unique to them. And ultimately something they can relate to, something they can remember, and makes the difference on a daily basis. Good Robert Morris Cook there. Inspiring others to be their best. That's what I strive to do every single day. And whether it's out visiting the units, it's celebrating with our team members, steering team, whatever it is, inspiring others to be the best is what I sort of related to. And it's something I can remember rather compared to each individual mission vision as I'm out of Parkhurst account, a Cura account, and it really has changed just the way, quite frankly, I lead as well. Innovation. They talked about it's all about staying relevant, especially in the restaurant side of the business, moving forward. How can we, and the two things around innovation that we focus on is how can we serve our guests better and how can our units be simpler to operate, quite frankly, for our team members? How can we make the jobs for our 9,500 team members easier, simpler on a daily basis, and quite frankly, more rewarding? A couple things we did. I'll give you an example of this, and many of you probably have examples of innovation. 5 or 6 years ago, we had some pickup window, actually not pickup windows. Delivery was key in our business. People were competing against us. They were delivering to people's homes. We were not going to do that. Takeout was growing. We're about 4 or 5% of sales at the time. And how many of you go to those restaurants, you pull outside, someone comes to your car, they run back in with your payment or whatever, bring the food back out. It's pouring down rain. You've got soaked twice because your window goes down twice. We had a few of those. They just weren't working. Folks were complaining on a rainy day, for instance, and you get soaked. You roll your window down. We went back and spent 1.5 years, quite frankly, living in people's homes for a period of time, finding the way they order food, finding the way they get food into their homes, and realize that the way we've got to do this is just like every other fast food restaurant. Put in windows into our buildings. We now have 43 pickup windows. We'll probably put 2 or 3 more on. But our goal back then was to do one thing, to dominate full-service takeout. Not compete with Taco Bell's and McDonald's. We set a mission back then that we want to dominate the full-service takeout model. That's the Applebee's, the Denny's, and whatever else you consider full service. Now we've got 43 takeout windows. Our takeout business now has gone from 4% to 10% in just a few years, but it really is a game changer. And what's changed, in addition just to sales going up, is the satisfaction. We now have about 97% order accuracy as a result of it. But it really was realizing that we went down the wrong path to begin with and retrenching. Starting over, spending 1.5 years and sort of analyzing it, and now we're on the right path, I'm clearly convinced for sure. Second thing we've also done, just an example, salad bars. Salad bar, 2 years ago, we were doing about 20 or 22% of all of our business through the salad bars. We decided it was time to reinvent it. You can never sort of rest on your laurels, at least in our mind, of things that have been going the right direction. So we spent a year-long project, revamped the entire salad bar, added a lot more fruit after research, realizing that people really want fruit, soup, salad, and fruit bar now. But spent a lot of time, our salad bar sales, as I mentioned at the beginning, are now 25%. It's something that clearly differentiates us from the rest of the competition, and because there just aren't many out there anymore. There's a good reason. They're a pain in the rear end to operate for sure. It's probably why most people have got rid of them, but they clearly are something that can differentiate us from the rest of the competition out there, and that's something we'll continue to focus on for sure. The one thing in innovation, I hinted to at the beginning, is sharing things across brands. We do a decent job there, but right now we're actually undergoing with both 2 institutions in town here, a knowledge transfer project. Finding ways that we can transfer knowledge between brands, bigger, better, faster, the things that we want to transfer. So we're actually spending about 1.5 years or 2 years of doing research right now internally of how information is transferred between DM groups, within restaurants, across brands, and then this group that we're working with will come back and say, these are some best practices in order to implement some of these things, these faster, quite frankly, so we'll see how that turns out. Finally, in the way of innovation is remodels. I talked about it at the beginning. We're not going to have the nicest looking buildings out there because there's always someone new that's going to come in the market for sure. But that's one thing. We do invest about $5 to $6 million a year. This year we'll invest about $8 because we just redid. Anyone been to our new Banksville store? We opened the internet last year. That's our next model. We just actually had our groundbreaking on Friday for our Bethel store that we're going to tear down. We're also going to do the Canonsburg store. They're very difficult decisions, and if Dan Wilson was here, our CFO, he and I have debated this a lot because the return on invested capital is not going to hit 25%. When you've got a building that's got nothing left in it and it's kicking off a heck of a lot of cash flow, it's a nice number to see. So when you invest $2.5 to $3 million in a new restaurant, the return's not going to be there. But what will be there is another 30 years in that building. And that's being a privately held company. We typically take a look at the long, long, long horizon, sometimes to our fault, quite frankly. But that's what it's all about, and making sure that we're going to survive, and I'll talk about that at the very end here for sort of the next generation as well. Teardowns also bring in a new image, and you talk about we care about people. It's amazing the Banksville store, what it's done to the morale in that unit. That restaurant was probably one of our worst, but now it's a beautiful place, and it is amazing with sunlights. I mean, no restaurants have sunlights except ours in Banksville. The morale in that restaurant, not that it was bad, but it is amazing how well how great it is right now. And that's sort of another thing that we've sort of forgot about as we tear down these stores and put up a brand new one as well. The final thing in innovation, and there's actually the old store, and that was the new one right to the right of it as we before we tore down the one to the left. This right here, fail faster. Internally, we talk a lot about this. We've got to fail faster. If we're not failing at every single new management orientation, at the beginning of every month, I speak to the new managers, and I talk about this, that, you know, when you get out there, make mistakes. Make them over and over and over. Try not to make the same mistake over and over and over, but try to make mistakes. That's how we learn. If we're not making mistakes, we talk about we're not innovating. We're not pushing the envelope. We're not doing things bigger, better, faster. We need to continue to fail faster. And right now, it's been a frustrating year on the takeout front because we were ready to implement online ordering. And I'll give you this example that we spent a lot of time just over the last week saying, we blew it, we screwed up. 2.5 years ago, we've got these takeout windows, things are going along pretty well, but we don't have online ordering yet. It's frustrating. We started about 3 years ago and said, okay, it's time for us to finally do this. We worked with our partner. We were seeing sort of glitches all the way along the way, and we didn't make a change quick enough. We waited all the way to the end, year and a half in the implementation phase, and then our vendor said they weren't ready to do it and they couldn't do it. So a year and a half, we got to start all over now. And we saw the signs in that. I keep saying, oh, bang myself in the head, or head of marketing. I'm like, Kevin, we really screwed this thing up. We had an opportunity to fail early on and start over, and we didn't. So now we're back to sort of phase one. And it's another reminder. And, you know, we celebrated that, quite frankly. Not to celebrate the loss, but we celebrated that we've made a mistake. We learned from it. The next time this comes around, we will not do it again. But it's all about failing faster, and I encourage you in your organizations, if you're not failing, you may not be implementing fast enough, innovating fast enough for sure. Okay, talk about failing faster. Many family businesses fail, and the Grealishes know this. That's why they sit apart there for sure. But this is our last Thanksgiving dinner here. You can see, and some of you know my family, so Brooks is in the background mixing his drink there, and Mark's got the plate on his on the left there, chowing down. But how many of you in this room are family? 3 or 4, is that right? So just not too many, 3 or 4. So they know what to change. There's never problems with the communications in family businesses, I tell you. That's the one thing you never have problems with. But ultimately, I'm second generation. I mentioned my father came to the business in 72, 73, bought the company in the 80s. He retired in, I guess, 2008, 2009. He's still there. He's still the majority shareholder, so he ultimately still likes his dividend checks when we pay those out. That's his key. At this point, my mother also retired about 4 years ago. She was director of corporate giving for 20 or so years, so the little bit of money we made, she gave it away quickly. But either way, it really is all about a family business. Some of the things that we go through, first of all, our non-business, our non-family execs are key. I mentioned Dan Wilson, our chief people officer, our head of marketing. Those folks are saints to deal with us, trying to balance the family versus the business and what's best. Because there's no doubt, especially in the corporate giving world, we have a corporate giving committee where I do not sit on that, but a number of the other family members do, and it's amazing trying to balance what folks think we should give to and what we should not give to, and then you've got the non-family execs thinking we should give to this, and trying to balance those interests become pretty dramatic and pretty challenging for sure. Some of the biggest challenges that we deal with, besides communication in a family business, it's never ending. Just that I talked about at the beginning, trying to fill people in what's going on, what's not going on, what they should know about, what they need to know about. That's clearly the number one thing. We get together on a monthly basis, our family does, Brooks, Mark, and my dad still, and just talk about things that are going on in the business and outside the business, because sometimes they really interrelate for sure. Also balancing the family interest versus the business. I mean, we're in a business of 9,500 lives that we serve on a given day, that we support. And so we are constantly reminding ourselves, they're one and the same, our business and our family, but at the same time, we need to make sure we're supporting both our family and, more importantly, the 9,500 lives that come to work every single day at Eaton Park. So that can be a challenge at times, especially when you're looking way out 10, 20, 30, 40 years, where many of our team members are looking for a paycheck right now. So in some cases, we're making decisions that are what's going to be best for 20 or 30 years down the road. So that can be a challenge at times for sure. Secondly, it may sound trivial, but trying to separate holidays from business discussions for sure. We've gotten better at that, and I sort of laugh because even yesterday I was out with my family, my wife and 2 kids and my parents, and halfway through the meal we end up talking about business. I'm like, oh, this is great. And you can see my wife like, oh, it's Mother's Day. Okay, let's move on. So even an instance like that, it seems so trivial, but there are those times it's one and the same. It's family and business, and it becomes a challenge. My mom, luckily, is typically the one that will say, okay, no more. Jeff, Jim, shut up. We're done. There's no business. Move on. It's Mother's Day. But it's a good sounding board for sure. Thirdly, and the thing that I heard it last week at this family business event I was at as well, biggest challenge that we have, and many do, is trying to separate the individual jobs that we all do within the organization. And that's where we've probably been able to overcome it, whereas my brother Brooks oversees all the purchasing. I try to stay out of all purchasing decisions. My brother Mark oversees all our corporate dining stuff. I try to stay out of that. And then ultimately I'm CEO, so Brooks and Mark are always trying to get into what I'm doing. But at the same time, we do our best in trying to stay out of each other's job, and that's really ultimately, I think, what keeps us sort of sane and getting along, because we do get along really well. We enjoy being together, but those are things, sort of family business, I think those are best practices as well. It wasn't always that way. Years ago when I first came, we were sort of all doing everything, and that can be pretty dangerous and frustrating at times. So those are things we constantly are sort of dealing with for sure. On the opportunity side, and there's lots of them, and on the family business side, ultimately, in many cases, we're not publicly held. So it's a big plus. We can do sort of things at our own pace. And in some cases, people think we move too slow internally. Some of the non-family, and Dan's actually a great sounding board. We got to do this a little quicker. But then on the backside, no, we want to take this slow. Let's be careful how we sort of go down this thing. In some cases, we'll move faster. Delicious Raw, which I didn't talk about because it's so new. Anyone been to our new juice concept downtown? Right across from the new PNC Tower? Okay, one. And it's sort of a niche product, but it's got great first reviews. We've been there for about a month now. But that's an example of moving faster and doing something we said we weren't going to do. A year ago, we made sort of an internal announcement. We were done doing new things. We had all these brands. Hello Bistro was growing. We had 3. We're getting ready to do our 4th, and hopefully many more. Parkhurst and Cura were growing. We're reinvesting in the Eaton Park brand with new buildings. We made a sort of an internal announcement. We were done doing new concepts. So then my brother Mark and I came up with this great idea of this juice thing. So in a matter of a week, all of a sudden we just sprung. We're getting ready to open a juice concept. And it wasn't a few months, it was just a few months earlier that we had said we were done doing this. So people were like, I thought we said we weren't doing any more new concepts. Well, we sort of like this one. So next thing you know, we got a new juice concept, and that's what's fun about family business. You have the opportunities. If you come across something you really like, you can do it. It's a very low investment, very low risk, and it's been a real win so far. So there's things like that as well. Also the opportunities to develop things around the family interests. My brother Mark, who some of you know, came back in 2003. He was actually working for a restaurant chain out east, and he really had a passion around independent restaurants. So he came back and he actually developed for a year Six-Pen Kitchen, and that was sort of his baby, and he also has developed the Porch. He's developed the Hello Bistro concepts for him. So in that case, you've got the opportunity in family business, at least in ours, to develop things around individual interests, as long as they make sense, as long as we can make some money, hopefully, long term. But that's one big opportunity that we've at least seen from the family business as well. Also opportunities to give back to the community in unique ways. That's one thing we pride ourselves in. My mother and father are always big in giving back to the community, so we've continued that. But there's been opportunities to give back in unique ways. If you're donating chef's talents, if you're giving to the food bank, if you're just volunteering in general. So there's lots of things in addition to local. Since 2002, 2003, we've taken this big campaign on giving back to local farmers. 23% last year was purchased locally, which is amazing given most of the winter we can't buy anything local. And but 23% of everything we bought last year from, say, Six Pen Kitchen was within 125 miles from that restaurant. Everything from Philadelphia was 125 miles of that. So we've been able to really focus on that, whereas the big competitors can't do that. They won't do that because it's just too difficult from a purchasing system. And we've been able to come in from a sort of a niche there. And then finally, the opportunity to compete against the big guys. And I got to be careful because I know Airmark's still in the food service here. But at the same time, it does give us the opportunity to compete against the Airmarks and the Sodexos and the Compasses, because in many cases, our clients do want to support family businesses. They want to support people that are making a difference in the community. So we really play that up, and we think that's definitely an opportunity to continue to grow as a result of that. Okay, there's this side of the family business too, especially as we think about the next generation. And we think about this a lot. And in our business, we're 24/7, 365 days a year, quite frankly, we serve food. So people always say, well, you stay with the business forever. And at this point, I love what I do. But I don't know if everybody will. And we spent a lot of time over the last few years in particular, especially with the third generation. Cora is now 13 or 14. Brooks is a daughter. What's next for them? And what we don't want to do is all of a sudden make, quite frankly, the three of us in particular or the next generation feel like they're handicapped to the business. Being handcuffed to a business is not fun, especially if it's something that you feel you're obligated to come into. So we spend a lot of time talking about opportunities, and if someone doesn't want to come in the family business, if one of us wants to leave, that's an option. You're not going to be looked down on. There's opportunities to do that. So that's really new in our business. In our family, quite frankly, 3 or 4 years ago, I would have never had this slide up there because, we all came in the business. We would have thought we would have never left. The grandkids would absolutely come in the business. But that sort of changed. As we continue to grow, there are opportunities for folks to do different things. So we'll see how that evolves. I'm not sure anyone will leave at this point, but there may be in the 5 grandkids, who knows if they want to come in. But that opportunity clearly is there, and we're supportive to do whatever. And ultimately, this is the next generation. And I can tell you, Brooks, Mark, and I talk about this a lot, there is a little pressure not to screw the thing up. So there is something for them to come into. And but Cora's on the right there, and she's 13 or 14. So actually, she's 14, because I think next year she can serve at 15. That's the. So next year it may be hard to find people, so we'll need her. So as the market grows, but ultimately, you know what? We love what we do, and we appreciate everyone's support from the community for sure. And we're looking to be around for 65 plus more years, as long as we continue to make the right investments and hire the right non-family business executives for sure. But we ultimately think the business is bright for sure. And questions at all?
Jeff, that was great. Thanks. Can you all hear me? Okay, there are a lot of questions and some good ones. We'll start you off with a really difficult one. A complex one, shall I say. How many Smiley cookies are sold in a year?
I don't know how many are sold, but we produce between 10 and 11 million. So probably 2.5 million are given away each year is my ballpark figure, and then we probably sell 7 to 8 million.
Okay, so
there's 13 different shapes and sizes, by the way, too. You probably didn't know that.
How do you motivate employees to be innovative, creative, and to accomplish the mission?
Sure. In many cases, we give them the liberty to. Lots of the mission is to create. I'll speak to Eaton Park because that's simple. Create smiles. That's the mission around Eaton Park. Whether it's with the team members, whether it's with the guests, whether it's in the community, our goal is to create smiles. So, in many times, people come in, and yesterday I saw people coming. They must have just come from the hospital. So we serve folks. You come as you are. I mean, you've got people that have just come in from the hospital. Got people who just got off an airplane, a red eye, and look disastrous. They come to Eaton Park because, quite frankly, you can do it. We're all about. And then you got people dressed up to the nines, and so really, it's just an unbelievable collage of guests. And each one, our goal is to create a smile. So in some cases, we don't create a smile at first, and we give the team members the liberty to make a difference. So they may give them a cookie, they may pick up their meal, may give them a piece of pie, may make a joke, walk them to their car if it's raining with an umbrella. So we give them the liberty to make sure that experience goes well. And do they do it all the time? Absolutely not. In some cases, it's the systems we've set up in place that they can't do it, so that's where we learn. We've got to tweak some things. But we try to give them the liberty to do what it takes to create a smile for sure.
So this one deals with, it just kind of asks you to discuss the notion of innovation, and you touched on it somewhat with your new venture downtown, but touch on innovation in the organic and healthy food area.
It's huge. And it's huge in a niche market, too. People still, on the word healthy right now, on our contract dining side, both Parkhurst and Cure, we're trying to get our arms around what is healthy. Because we've got about 110 contract dining locations, and every single location will define healthy differently. If we're at Highmark, it's one thing. If it's at Robert Morris, it's one thing. And if you pick any other long-winded Oakmont or Providence Point, it'll be different. So we're trying to figure out right now in the next year, actually probably the next 6 months, come out with how do we define healthy and wellness, more importantly, the whole wellness piece. Because if I ask each one of you around this room to go down and write what healthy or wellness means, it would be all different. There are some people that talk about healthy and wellness, and really they're not talking about healthy and wellness. So they come into our restaurants. It's amazing how many people are on healthy diets, but they come in and have a super burger every other day with French fries. You can have a super burger and maybe a salad bar, but not every super burger and fries every day. Exercise can help, but it's not going to make up for the super burger and fries every single day. So on the healthy and wellness side, we continue to push the envelope, primarily on the restaurant side is the salad bar. In addition, a lot of the things, and people don't really think about Eaton Park being a fish company, but our #1 selling dinner is our baked scrod, which is a fish. Slowly is our lemon sole slowly creeping up to that. If you've not had our lemon sole, if you're talking about healthy, olive oil and breadcrumbs and lemon, it's incredible. So salad bar, but continuing to push things that are healthy on the wellness side. On the contract dining side, it's a whole different spectrum. Students in particular are definitely leading the way in that from these niche diets. So there's where we're getting a lot of ideas from the contract dining side, the colleges, the students at Robert Morris, at Chatham, at wherever. We're getting a lot of good ideas from them and bring them over to the restaurant side as well. But it's blurred is the problem, and there's really no definition of primarily wellness is what we talk about. So that's the thing as an organization we're challenging. How do we define wellness? So we're not rolling out 175 different wellness programs. It can be one or two.
Here's a question, a personal one. What type of leader are you? Do you believe leaders are made or born?
You know what, I've had a lot of, it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think you got to be born with it, just to have that sort of killer instinct, the passion to lead people. It's not always the easiest thing in the world, but I enjoy it, I have fun. There's challenges every single day. Even yesterday when I was out, you see some challenges, and you're like, oh gosh, why are we doing it that way? But Mother's Day, you can't even talk to them about it. So you sort of turn your head and move on and just make a note, and next time actually I'll be back to 2 of those restaurants today so I can bring up my things today. But on days like that, you sort of bite your tongue and move on and say, okay, you know what, we could do things better for sure. But ultimately, I think in many cases you're born, and you got to have that passion. It's hard to sort of create that passion if you don't have it when you're born.
What's behind the culinary renaissance in Pittsburgh?
It's awesome, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, 15 years ago when I came back, I moved back from Chicago, and I'd worked for Federated Investors, which is an awesome company. I loved working for them, especially in Chicago. And I came back here, and I'll never forget the 2 things my father, and all of you have been to Chicago, and I can't wait. I'm going on Saturday, and we eat at probably 15 different restaurants in 3 days, and it's just a great place. When I was coming back, my dad's like, you know what, 2 things. I had a boat out there, too. And he said, first of all, you don't want to bring your boat back. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't want to bring your boat back? Why would I not? I said, there's 3 rivers there, aren't there, still in Pittsburgh? And he said, no, and I'm getting a little off track, but it's a story I'll never forget. He's like, no, you're going to have a conflict of interest if you bring your boat back. What are you talking about? And he said, because on the weekends, which you're going to realize this weekend wasn't the best sales-wise, on the weekends, you're going to want it to rain. I said, why am I going to want it to rain? I'm going to want a boat. No, you're going to want it to rain because that's when we're busiest. People's picnics are ruined on the weekends when it rains, so they have to come in to eat at Eaton Park. They have to come inside. I said, okay, and you know what? He was right. It is a conflict. So this weekend, we had no rain. I was sort of frustrated all weekend. I wanted rain so bad yesterday afternoon, but it didn't happen. So, but and then he also said, and I said, well, where do you eat in Pittsburgh besides Eaton Park? He said, oh, there's lots of places. And there wasn't back in '96, there really wasn't. But now, and to get to your question, it is incredible. Some of it, I think, is the media, quite frankly. I mean, you folks and some of these magazines, or Pittsburgh Magazine and a number of other places, are really highlighting some of the outstanding chefs. I'll tell you, in general, I think a lot of it has to do with the media. Getting out, some of these niche restaurants. I mean, there's some cool, and if you've not spent time in Lawrenceville, And there's just some incredible new places down there in the south side, and there's too many to even get to them all anymore. I can't wait till the new taco place opens across from 6 Penn, because tacos are my favorite food, but it's been going on for a while. And but there really are, and I give a lot of it to the media, not because you're here, but I do think that has a lot to do with it. And there's some young chefs that keep coming up, and they're starting to train some of the younger cooks. I know we've done a lot of that. 6 Penn is, we've gone through, this is our 4th chef, and each chef we've sort of grown from internal. And that's what it's all about, just continuing to grow sort of the young talent and get them passionate about what's new and unique in the industry. And it's been fun to live here for sure and see it.
Will Eden Park ever sell beer or wine?
Yeah, we have that every year. Actually, we're right now kicking off our next 3-year strategic plan, and that'll be a big discussion point. I don't think so. We tried it at Hello Bistro, and if any of you have been to Hello Bistro, we tried it for the first year. We were doing like 2% of sales, and given liquor licenses now downtown cost between $80,000 and $90,000. In the suburbs, Cranberry, they're $225,000. So when you start thinking about return on investment, it's not there. So I don't think we will. We've actually had, when I first, I'm trying to think, back in 2003 or 2004, which was 2-3 year plans ago, we actually sat down and met with folks about the beer and wine, primarily beer, and it was very polarizing. We had some families sort of say, well, I'm not going to come there. I don't see it being a safe place anymore, because a lot of people do look to Eaton Park as being sort of a safe place, safe haven. And if we had beer, some were sort of concerned that it wouldn't be that safe haven anymore.
So that's why the LCB won't get out of that business. It's because the liquor licenses cost so much.
Or most of it, it's not them. It's private sales anymore.
Yeah.
It's not the LCB. They aren't issuing any more. It's just one guest selling to another.
All right. So how does an established brand like Eaton Park stay relevant as this Pittsburgh market finally seems to be getting younger, you know, with more transplants, I guess, as the sophistication of the culinary market improves?
Right. A lot of that comes down to the marketing for sure. And you'll see at the end of that, which was at the end of the first video, you saw sort of Smiley and the cart running around. That was our kids' meal promotion probably 6-7 years ago. And we've sort of downplayed that now. We have a lot of conversations about the Smiley cookie. As I look down there, how much do we use that? How much do we not use it? Because folks from out of town that are moving in, what we don't want them to do is think that Eaton Park's just for kids. And there are some perceptions out there that Eaton Park is just a kid's place. So we have lots and lots of internal debates, and a lot of it, quite frankly, within the family too, of how often do we use the Smiley cookie, when do we use it, when do we not use it. And in some cases, and I've got a little smiley on here, our logo, the Eaton Park Hospitality Group, and if I flip back there, you know what, I'll show you at the very beginning. You'll notice, there it is right here. There it is. You'll notice here it's slightly different, the smiley there. We sort of, it's not just the cookie, we sort of shadow it there on purpose to not signify a cookie or try not to signify a cookie. So we spent a lot of time debating. In the next 3 years, this plan that we're going into will be another big conversation around it, because we don't want that first impression that it's just a kid's place. Obviously, we love serving kids, we love serving seniors, we love serving families, we love serving couples. We really are trying to be everything to everyone, which is not easy.
So we have time for one last question.
Sure.
What's the best and most challenging part of running a family enterprise?
The best is, let me think about that for you. And I hinted at some of it. I think the best is, at least in my case, is feeling like you're making a difference. I mean, our business, I love the business. My parents started it, didn't start it, but came in '72 and really have changed the dynamics of sort of the family culture. I enjoy being sort of part of this sort of family organization for sure. We've got so many great team members, and it's interesting because although we've got 3 to 5 family members, depending on how you define if they're retired or not, working in the business, we've got so many of them, our CFO, our Chief People Officer, they're really part of the family. So we all feel like we're making a difference. The biggest challenge is their communication. That's easy. Communication within the family, just making sure everyone's on the page they should be on. And in many cases, trying to keep them informed. We actually, 2 years ago, I guess it was, or 3 years ago, brought in a family business consultant as we continue to grow and look to the 3rd generation. And it was helpful. A lot of it was just focused on communication. because there'll be things I didn't hear about, and I'm like, why didn't I hear about that? And my brother Brooks will be the same way, why didn't I hear about that? So anymore, it's trying to be proactive and realizing, okay, what does my father want to hear about? And so being sort of my father is good at reminding me, sort of being the CEO, you've got to think about everyone's best interest in the family, and quite frankly, not the family as well, the organization. So there's a lot of balancing acts, but it's fun, and it keeps you moving every day and enjoy everything I do. So.
Well, everybody, please join me in thanking Jeff.
Thank you.